and welcome back to Pipi Chongloy Talk Show. Tunini ko akan ki Olympiading special guest hi ahile zaumta Uday Reddy, also known as Cordelia. Amahi Professor Mintanta khat India ko na hin his on let to ahi Birmingham University UK teaching aboling amazong hi theta khat hile Wikipedia zong one of the editor ahi in boy hung ki patna ko na e holang ai ha ta hung pang ahi in online na hizi ahi email matering F.I.R ho anabol kumovin hichitu hi kahin say hundi ahi in lungdut in anangayo hite. So welcome to my talk show.
Thank you, Pippi. Nice to be here.
Thank you for being my guest. You have been an ardent supporter of my people ever since the conflict started, and because of that you got an F.I.R from the Meitei. So let's talk about it. Do you have any legal protection?
Yes, I have a lawyer, and we can get more lawyers if I need to. So that's not a big problem. I mean, right now we don't have the F.I.R. We only have news reports that say that there is an F.I.R.
Okay.
We don't know where the F.I.R is and who filed it, and which police station has filed it, etc., etc. So until that information becomes available, there's not too much we can do. So we're just sitting and waiting. But at the same time, you probably know that my Twitter account was blocked in India. So my Twitter account is fine. I can use it, but people in India cannot read anything I write. So we've been in discussions with the IT ministry to, get an explanation as to why that was done. They're not being very helpful, so we might have to, take legal action against that, right? So that may be our starting point. But I cannot talk too much about all the legal things because, they will be decided in court. But as far as the complaints are concerned, so what got published in the newspapers is a summary of the complaint that was made to the police. So as far as the complaint is concerned, I can say point blank that they're all false allegations. There is no truth in any of them.
Okay.
So if anybody has any doubts, that they can lay them to rest.
You mean to say that the F.I.R was just a rumors? I mean, they didn't really launch yet. It was just in the media, is it? If so,
well,
what does the UK government or authority have to say about it?
They're not involved, right? Because there's an F.I.R filed in India, in Manipur, we presume, right? Because that's what the newspapers said. But F.I.R is, from my understanding, it is just a way of registering the start of an investigation, right? So the police will investigate, and when they investigate, they might, write to me or approach me, and that's when I would get to know. So there is no reason for anybody to know that an F.I.R has been registered, in their name until the police do an investigation. So in my case, nobody has approached me, so we don't know whether, whether there is going to be an investigation. All we know is that news reports appeared. So that's where the situation stands.
By any chance, if there is like legal investigation from the police department or from the UK government, then what do you have to say about it? What is your stand?
There's not going to be anything from the UK government because in Britain we have, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. So there are, I mean, I haven't done anything which would violate, the normal norms of public speech. I haven't cursed anybody. I haven't asked anybody to be attacked or anything of that kind. So, even those in the West, they're not considered, they're not considered beyond the limit unless, it's a very explicit kind of, incitement, right? So recently, somebody in Leicester was arrested because his name is Majid Freeman. He was one of the people who was involved in the Leicester riots saga in 2022. So he was arrested apparently because he was encouraging people to join Hamas or support Hamas, which is a banned organization in Britain. And so, that was the charge that was brought against him. So those are the kinds of people for whom there might be an investigation. But whatever I have done is normal tweeting, writing what I know. And that is certainly not anything against the law in Britain. So it's not an issue.
Okay, that's a relief. I have had a hard time trying to digest the fact that they have launched F.I.R. So it's a relief. You being a historian yourself, keeping aside the F.I.R. thing, the rumors, in my recent episode with Viswajit, he said that Manipur was separated from Assam, which the Meitei, agitated or didn't like, and they rebelled against it. So from your, professional point of view, what do you have to say about it? Can you clarify?
Yeah, I think he probably overstated the situation a little bit. It wasn't part of Assam. It was a princely state, as we know. And even after it acceded to India, it remained a princely state. But princely states in India were generally under the control of a neighboring province, right? So the governor of Assam was the person in charge of overseeing the administration of Manipur and also Tripura. So even though they were not part of Assam, the governor of Assam was still responsible for its administration. And it also occurred to me when I heard this controversy that the governor of Assam, his name was Sir Muhammad Akbar Haidari, at the time of Indian independence. He actually died in Manipur, right? So he was touring Manipur because it was part of his jurisdiction. And then...
So, could you please elaborate his tragic death, or how did he die in Manipur?
I think the name of the place was Waikong. My memory is not that good about it, but so he visited Manipur. He, had discussions with the Maharaja and the council, which was the administration that was supporting the administration, that was supporting Maharaja for the administration. So he had his discussions, and I think he went to this place. I think it was by a lakeside. So he went to this place to spend the weekend or to take rest. And in the night, he had a stroke, and in the morning, they found him dead. So his body was brought to Imphal in, with full honors. And I believe he was buried in Kangla Fort. So, yeah, so for people who disbelieve that, Manipur had anything to do with Assam, here is your concrete proof that the governor of Assam was in Manipur when he died.
You mean to say that Viswajit was not totally wrong? Or, his statement was like somehow true, partly true, because even though Manipur was a princely state, it was somehow governed or administered by the Assam governor. So is that what you're trying to portray?
That's right. And that's right. So during the British Raj, it was really administered under the governor of Assam, because there was an official called the president of the Manipur State Darbar, essentially a district collector, a deputy commissioner kind of position. So that was the main administrator for Manipur during the British Raj. And that official reported to the governor of Assam. And if there were any disputes between the Maharaja and that official, the governor of Assam was the final arbiter of, of deciding the issue. So yeah, I mean, Vishwajit is not a historian, so his understanding is kind of at a very high level. But his understanding was basically correct, that the governor of Assam was the chief person of India who was in charge of Manipur. But it was not that Manipur had become a part of Assam.
Okay.
So
Maybe it was my fault if
it was
I had given him,
associated.
ample of time to explain. He would have explained in a detailed manner, and that could justify his point. So yeah, it was my fault that I sum up everything in a blink of an eye. Um, anyway, putting aside the Manipur being part of Assam, if I look back the conflict when it started, the whole world, the national media, everyone was favoring the Meitei, and now it's been 1.5 years, and then the attention is slowly diverting to the Kukis. I don't think the Kukis are forcing anyone to support us, but people are slowly trying to see the truth. I don't know if I'm wrong or right. And then whoever is supporting the Kukis are getting a fire one after another. So do you have to say anything in this regard?
Okay. I don't agree with you that everybody was supporting Meiteis originally. Even from the beginning, it was clear to responsible journalists that Kukis were being targeted. Um, but somehow the information was not fully reported, right? So there's a key piece of information, which I have mentioned many times on Twitter, and it's also there on Wikipedia, that at the end of the first week, the number of Meiteis who had died was 10, and the number of Kukis who had died was 77. So something like 80% of the deaths during the first week of violence belong to the Kukis. So that tells you very clearly that Kukis were the main target. And also, I think the Meitei deaths had probably occurred mostly due to clashes. So if there were two sides fighting, people from both the sides, some people from both the sides might die. But the Kuki deaths were targeted killings, right? So there were people who were essentially murdered in Imphal Valley because of whatever prejudice or anger the Meiteis wanted to show. And many of them were murdered in very brutal manner, as we know. So I think the press had always understood, Indian media had always understood that this was the fact. And I was just looking at, reports from 6th or 7th May, etc. And I can see, I mean, even though they did not have a full understanding of the entire situation, I could see that they did acknowledge right from the beginning that Kukis were the main target. It was only the first day, the 3rd May, which was not covered properly in Indian media because Indian media did not have reporters in Manipur at that time. Only one newspaper had it, The Print, which is an electronic or web-based news website. So they anticipated that there would be trouble in Manipur because they were already, you remember there was this open air gym that was burnt on 29th of April. So the Print anticipated that there was trouble in Manipur, and they sent a reporter. She was in Imphal. I forget her name. She was probably, well, let me not guess. Okay, so one reporter of the Print was there in Imphal. But otherwise, the Indian media news basically came from news agencies. News agencies like PTI, ANI, UNI, etc. They have reporters in every state. And whenever something important happens, they file the reports, and then the newspapers use their information. If they have time, if they have the resources, they might do additional checking, but they use the news agencies as their first point of information. So on 3rd of May, the main news reported in Indian media came from the news agencies. Now, I mean, I don't know if we should talk so much about the initial few days, but I think this is one important point, which is that the Imphal media covered the first day very well. So I have access to the Shanghai Express and Imphal Free Press. Both of them had reporters in Churachandpur who had seen the rally from the beginning to the end, and they covered it, and they acknowledged that it was completely peaceful. In addition to them, East Mojo, which is an Assam-based electronic newspaper, they also had a reporter in Churachandpur, and he actually stayed there for 3 or 4 days after the 3rd of May, and he reported daily, and he filed video reports as well. And later on, about a month or two later, he was interviewed by some other group, and that video interview is available on YouTube. I would encourage everybody to watch it. So he narrated his entire experience of those 3 or 4 days being in Churachandpur. And he has debunked many myths and many pieces of misinformation that have circulated. For example, there was this rumor that a medical student was raped, and there were rumors that children were beheaded and things like that. So he mentioned it clearly, like he was getting calls from Imphal, from various people asking if those things were true. And he said, no, none of them were true, right? These were all preposterous claims.
I just remembered a quote, a very, well-known or popular quote that says, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes." Because of, those lies, those false narratives, this war has escalated so much and many lives has lost. But with truth putting on its shoes, I think things will slowly, come back to normal, hopefully. Thank you
Hopefully.
for
The
supporting.
truth is still very, very hard to find, I'm afraid.
The light
So,
has already traveled halfway around the world. Now truth is putting on its shoes, and it will take
yeah.
some time, but hopefully things will get better. So thank you so much for your time. For the concluding remark, how genuine is the, goal of separate administration according to you? Do you think that separate administration is the only solution for the Kukis, or if there is any alternatives according to you?
Okay, I'm not a political analyst or a political commentator. So what I say would be very naive layman's point of view. And from that point of view, I think in order for any reorganization of a state, you need a very strong-willed government. And there has to be some benefit or some political benefit that the ruling party can derive from doing that separation. So, I mean, a good example is Andhra Pradesh, Telangana separation, which the people of Andhra Pradesh opposed very vehemently. So there, even though the capital is in Telangana, Hyderabad, Telangana is the more backward region, and Andhra Pradesh is the more, or what is now called Andhra Pradesh, that is a more prosperous region. And so the political party in power at that time, which was Indian National Congress, thought that by separating Telangana, they would become more popular in Telangana and they would get political benefit out of it, which didn't happen, by the way. Congress lost both Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. But at least that was their, hope that they would get more influence in Telangana. So unless there is some political benefit of that kind, I think that generally the governments tend to keep the status quo, right? So that's what I think the governments today would want to do as well. And the cost for separation here is kind of high because Meiteis are very, very emotional about it. They believe, the Manipur state as it exists today is a very ancient one. and they think of it as a life or death issue, right? It's something they take extremely seriously. And so separating any part of the state would be a very risky thing for a government to do. So that's what I think is the problem, right? So I believe that Kukis deserve their own state, their own administration. But politically, it's a very difficult thing to achieve. But given that, other kinds of arrangements can always be considered. So there was this plan for providing a territorial council for the Kukis. That plan was there even before the violence started. And some people believe, and I believe also, that the violence may have started on 3rd May in order to block that proposal from going through. So those kinds of arrangements can be revisited, and whatever additional needs Kukis, have, and whatever additional demands they want to make, they can continue to make them. So those would be some kind of compromise solutions. So I would encourage Kukis to consider those seriously.
So according to you, the Kukis deserve a separate administration. If there's no way out, we can opt for other means. So that's your standpoint.
Yeah. So as much autonomy as possible under the current constitutional arrangements, right? So that should be provided, I think.